Hello, my name is James Adams from Cannabis Place. Today I'm going to be doing a little introductory video that explains what Cannabis Place is, what kind of information you can go get from Cannabis Place, as well as a little bit on the situation of Australia and some of our other similar countries like USA, Canada, and what they've done to legalize and what we can see from Australia's future. So a bit about Cannabis Place. What we focus on is delivering information about the business, the culture, the legalization, and the medical side of cannabis. Australia is lagging a little bit behind with information, so public perception of cannabis still really focuses around people just smoking joints and taking bong hits in like a frat house or something like that. But if you have a look at the North American kind of perspective of cannabis, there's a real strong culture side. There's a real strong medicinal use side, especially for cancer and epilepsy. And Canada itself has legalized just in 2018. They put through the national legalization. So at a federal level, every province and every citizen, every person in Canada is allowed to recreationally use cannabis, but it also opens up the doors to a new industry, the cannabis industry, a new agricultural industry, and it allows for research into the medical use of cannabis. In North America, the USA, we have legalization in California as well. A few other states like Colorado, Washington, and so on, they've all legalized, but they've done it at the state level. This legalization is basically no criminal charges. There's still laws and regulation around like the use of cannabis, like there would be alcohol. Like you can't drink in front of a school, you can't smoke in front of a school, and so on. But what's interesting in the USA is that they've done it at a state level. So federally, it's still illegal. So when it comes down to research for the medicinal use of cannabis, it is still frowned upon. It is still difficult to do. One example is that when handling cannabis in California, where it's legal for someone just to go and buy it and smoke it, if you're doing research with it at, say, a federal level, you have to have a FBI agent or someone in that area to actually handle the drug. So there's a few little gray areas that are still needing to be worked out in USA, but Canada's done it at the federal level, and they've done it a little bit differently, and making it available to everyone is a lot easier. Now in Australia, we're lagging a little bit behind with the medicinal use. In North America, the medicinal use became available like California in 1996, and Australia's done that about 20 years later. We legalized the medicinal use of marijuana in 2016. And what we focus on here is like, what is medical marijuana, the legalization of marijuana in the Australian Capital Territory. This is really recent news. So we're just going to have a little look at this and see what's actually happening. So a bit of a backstory. 2016, we legalized medicinal marijuana. And what then happened is the industry, which was pretty much non-existent at the time, started to grow, because making medicinal marijuana legal then allowed for an industry to be created, because people were going to buy the product, and then there was going to be money there. Doctors were going to prescribe it mainly to patients with like epilepsy, cancer, and other difficult problems that a lot of people have, chronic illness and so on. So when it was legalized, we weren't actually ready, because we didn't grow any local cannabis product. Well, mainly for medicinal use, not recreational use. So what we ended up doing was we focused on importing everything from Canada. And since we started doing that, a lot of Canadian companies have come into Australia, started propping up little businesses and preparing us to actually grow our own product. We have a lot of land. We have a lot of agricultural experts. We're quite ready to do this, but we also are quite inexperienced when it comes to the actual cultivation of cannabis. So what's interesting then is we, in 2017, provided the first license to cultivate marijuana to a company called Can Group. And since then, in September of 2019, the legalization of marijuana in the Australian Capital Territory has actually been put forward, which is very exciting because it's more of a decriminalization. So I'll give you a comparison. In Canberra, they completely legalized the drug at a federal level. So what that means is whether or not you're doing research for medicinal use, or you are purchasing it from a local dispensary like you would alcohol from a bottle store, you would just buy it and then consume it, and that's fine as well. That's not illegal. So it opens up a lot of doors to different opportunities with cannabis. Now, in Australia, what this bill is actually doing is decriminalizing the possession of marijuana. So the Labor Party and the Greens have been the ones to first push forward the bill, and they're going to have a majority vote, which is pretty exciting. So the idea behind this is a possession of cannabis is available for people. It's not going to be criminal if you get caught, and it's up to 50 grams of dry cannabis. So what that means is if it's the wet plant, then that's going to be a different game. If it's the actual dry cannabis, which is usually the form it comes in when you're going to consume it, smoke it, anything, up to 50 grams. Now, there's a bill that's come out here. It looks a little bland because it's the one that went through Parliament. But if we go down here, just find out a little bit more about what's actually available. So what is proposing is that there's a personal plant limit, so you can actually grow this yourself. So there's a limit of maximum of 2 plants per person, and there's a household limit as well. So what they were worried about is giving it 2 plants per person, and then you have a house full of 10 people, 20 plants, and then it could rise to potential situations where share houses or properties that otherwise have multiple residents could effectively be used as a larger scale grow house. And that's a little risky. Sure, they have to look at the criminal aspect of people trying to take advantage of this, because you can possess it, you can grow it, but you can't sell it, you can't buy it, which makes it pretty interesting. So you won't be seeing any dispensaries, any cannabis stores popping up and just selling it straight to you. It's going to be a little bit different. And there's restrictions on where it can be grown, where it can be stored, and a distinction between fresh and dried cannabis. The fresh one being it's the wet plant, and usually what they do is after it's matured and it's got the bud, the flower, what they do is they trim it, they dry it, and then obviously it loses a lot of the water weight. And then that's the actual form of the substance that people would consume. And then there's obvious stuff like smoking near children, and how it's going to work with other legislation, local law enforcement. Now, just to go in a little bit more about Cannabis Place here, we focus a lot on the legalization here, which is the most exciting part, but we also focus on the business side, the medicinal side. So when it goes to how it's going to be legalized, we're thinking it's going to come through early 2020. Then just to reiterate, there's a personal plant limit. So if you can get the seeds, you're probably going to be able to grow like 2 plants per person, maximum of 4 per household, which is reasonable. It's not too bad. And then Australia's view on cannabis, if we have a look at it, there's a majority of people that have admitted to the use of cannabis. So that everyone is familiar with it, but our perspective is a little bit more of the recreational drug use, and most of the information we have about medicinal use and everything just comes from North America. So we're still playing catch up and trying to build up like local subject matter experts when it comes to cannabis, educate GPs, doctors, and so on, so they understand how they can prescribe it, what's the availability, how to gauge the doses that are going to be required for different circumstances, for different patients, different illnesses, and so on. So there's still a lot to learn, and hopefully we can get a lot more information from America, Canada, and so on. So can you use cannabis in Canberra, in the Australian Capital Territory, as of today, in October 2019? you cannot. It is still illegal. But after this is passed, the bill called the Private Members Bill, set to pass in 2020, the possession and use of cannabis will finally be decriminalized. So the ACT police, if they catch you with, say, 5 grams of marijuana, you will not get a criminal record. But at the same time, the Australian Capital Territory, the police there, directly under the Australian Federal Police, and this is a unique situation only to this area of Australia. So there's a lot of grey areas. Now, you will not see any stores selling cannabis. There will not be any smoke cafes, at least legal ones like you would see in Amsterdam or North America. But behind closed doors, a lot of people are going to start growing. A lot of people are going to start smoking, and you'll be seeing it like in the social aspect a lot more. A lot of people are looking to go over to Canberra just to actually see the cannabis, grow the cannabis, buy the cannabis, smoke it, whatever you want. But what's really interesting is after the bill is passed, you're not really going to see anything. Nothing's really going to change. But if you live there and behind closed doors or at house parties or events and so on like that, it's going to be a lot more prominent. What I want to see is where going forward, are you going to have like smoking areas? Are people just going to be able to smoke weed there as well? So if you have a concert and you have a smoking area, people are just going to be able to get high there and go back to the concert? Or are there still going to be like fines, or are they still going to restrict it? Are you going to be able to openly bring marijuana like you would cigarettes into like an event or a concert or a festival, anything like that? A lot of the legislation is it's going to take a little time to work through it and see. For the future of marijuana, which is the most exciting thing in Australia because it's just started. So legalization happened in 2016, and that's for medicinal use. Industry was pretty much non-existent at that time. So as of 2019, that's 3 years and a bit since it all happened, the industry is about to hit 2 billion Australian dollars. That's pretty exciting. And a lot of it is companies focused on importing to supply the demand, because we got thousands of new patients every month that's been prescribed cannabis, and there's basically not enough to actually meet the demand. So a lot of it's just been imported, mainly from Canada. So with this industry, we also have a lot of people preparing the infrastructure, preparing the farms. A lot of people actually set up hemp farms, waiting for the availability of licenses to cultivate marijuana to come through, because at this point in time, it's extremely strict and highly regulated. So it's a very costly venture to go into at this point, and you're just going to be waiting for the license come through. And there's no certainty that you're going to get it, even if you tick all the boxes. So there's a little bit of a bottleneck there. What we're hoping to see is the federal regulation is going to become a little bit more solidified, a little bit more comfortable, and allowing the distribution of cultivation licenses to go out a little bit more across Australia to legitimate businesses that actually want to do this, so we can actually meet the demand and we can create those local experts, local products. It becomes cheaper, and I think that's going to be really good. So just one last thing about the future here, aside from future potential legalization after Canberra, what's next? We could easily see like another yes vote, similar to gay marriage. We could see that for legalization of marijuana like it was in Canada. But Australia's government is a little bit more conservative and less progressive than the North American government or state government or Canada. So it might be a little different there. But we're also expecting to see like a growth of jobs as we're creating a brand new industry, which is much needed in Australia outside of the traditional mining industry. We're expected over the next few years to create over 5,000 jobs in agriculture, medical, pharmaceuticals, retail, trade, import, export, all those different areas. It's going to actually create jobs, boost up the economy. It's going to be very exciting times. You're going to see a lot more become available. You're going to see the news and media become a lot more comfortable and speaking openly in a positive way about the effects of cannabis. And the great thing with Australia, even though we are behind, we're catching up. And all those arguments that were previously existing for why cannabis is bad for everyone, that's going to be a little bit different now, because we have all the information from North America, from Canada, from the States, that really identify like what the effects of it, the post-legalization effects. And a lot of people, especially in, let's say, Colorado, they have not only like boosted the economy by a massive amount, even through like tourism and so on, with people coming from different states over to Colorado, but the actual medical side, like health issues and so on, has started to drop because people have become less reliant on alcohol, on tobacco, and harder drugs. And the actual consumption of marijuana spiked, so then it just actually mellowed out. And the availability of it as well means that there's safer forms of the substance available. So less smoking and more eating, more digesting through liquids and so on, which is pretty exciting because people want to be healthy. And if there's better, safer alternatives, I think that's going to be the best thing that we can do. All right. So have a look at Cannabis Place. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button if you're interested, and stay up to date with all the future legalization, medicinal marijuana information in Australia, the culture, as well as the business side. As industry is starting to boom, we can see like where the economy is like booming, what kind of industry we're going to see, cafes, tourism, dispensaries. The future is going to be really bright when it comes to cannabis in Australia. All right, thank you.